Today's episode is the man behind the curtain of Democratic politics in Minnesota. Richard Carlbom chairs the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, the state Democratic Party here in Minnesota. And the only reason he's in that position is that his predecessor was just promoted to run the entire national Democratic Party. This is a person, Richard, who has made an incredible impact in his life, becoming the youngest mayor in the state of Minnesota's history, leading the marriage equality campaign and winning the right to marriage for same-sex couples across Minnesota before the federal government changed it, and becoming deputy chief of staff for the governor. Today, he chairs the party, and I was really curious to ask about that bio, but we didn't really have time to go into it because Minneapolis is in crisis right now. After a woman was killed in the streets just a few days ago, there is a rapid response from the Democrats and from ICE agents here, and it is a terrifying situation. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that. Let's get to it. Hey, before we get to our chat with Richard, I want to let you know about becoming a supporter. 1minutetours.com is where you can go to support the work that we do right here. It gives you access to exclusive things like the behind the scenes conversation that we're having right now. It's going to be at the end of this podcast, typically reserved only for our supporters. Today, we are making it available to the general public so you can find out a little bit more about what we do. Richard Carlbom, chair of the DFL. You're joining me on a quite eventful week here in our city, in my city of Minneapolis. Your city of Minneapolis as well? You live here?
Yeah, I live here.
Let's get started by hitting the button, if you don't mind.
There you go.
Your week started with some eventful news that the governor was choosing not to run for re-election after announced that he already had, and that was going to be the biggest news of the week. And then federal agents shot and killed a woman in South Minneapolis. And so we're sitting here reeling from that right now, and I'm keen to get into a lot of this. But first, I'm just curious to know like how you are doing, how you are feeling, and what your personal feelings about the week have been.
Well, thank you for asking. That's very kind of you to ask. I think like many people, I'm processing what we're experiencing as a state. I'm trying to understand what we're experiencing as a state in the context of everything that's happened this week, but also in the context of that's happened over the last year. You know, I've had this job since March of last year, and I can't tell you that I've had a quote unquote normal week at all. And so I am trying to figure out how to best be in the moment and support my family, support my friends. I'll say this week I've had more friends reach out to me, both friends who are in contact with me regularly, but also friends who I haven't heard from in some cases years, with very serious concerns and anxiety and confusion about what and how we should all be responding in the moment. So that, to me, you know, despite all of the unusual experiences we've had over the last year, that to me says to me it's a particular moment that our city and our state is in. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, Mr. Rogers, like, how can I be a helper in this moment?
Yeah. I also have had this because I have all these international contacts. I lived abroad for so long. I'm getting a lot of contacts from them. What is going on? What is going on in your city? Because, you know, this is international news, what's happening right here. I had a friend of my brother-in-law send me a video of their morning coffee with the TV on showing my neighborhood. And it's not even the first time this has happened this year, in the last year. Starting with George Floyd and the civil unrest that followed, continuing on to Annunciation, and now this. It seems like the nexus of the universe goes through Minneapolis right now.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, over the last several weeks, that definitely feels it. But, you know, we've had these monumental moments, historic moments, so repeatedly in Minnesota. And I had a friend who texted and was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe everything that's happening right now. And then immediately said, oh, I just read the last text I sent to you, which was the last shooting, Annunciation. Right?
God.
So it's like, that's how people are engaging with us now.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I kind of see you as the person behind the curtain, right? Like your name isn't known as publicly as an elected official, but you're someone who's in charge of a party, of a state party, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, and your predecessor. The reason that you're in the job right now is because he was chosen to lead the entire national Democratic Party. So you're in a pretty prominent position, and one that I imagine has a lot of responsibility behind the scenes, but I don't know what it is. So like, I'm really curious to know, like this week in particular, this woman is killed in the streets. What is your job in the aftermath of that? What do you do specifically?
Well, first and foremost, my job is to do what I can to build a team that helps us assemble a coalition that helps Democrats win at all levels of the ballot. And so, since I took this job on March 31st or whatever of last year in 2025, I've focused on building a team and building that coalition. And this week in particular, it starts off with, our sitting governor announcing he's decided not to seek a third term, which obviously has huge impact on our operations. We now have an open governor's race in Minnesota that we have to manage an endorsement process that is fair and open.
Oh, because you're in charge,
competitive.
As the head of the party, you're in charge of figuring out how to pick a nominee.
Yeah. And to make sure that, if there's 1 or 7 nominees, that everybody has equal opportunity to make their case to be endorsed by the party at our state convention at the end of May. So we're in the midst of that and focused on both celebrating the legacy of Governor Walz, but also preparing to manage that process, which starts with precinct caucuses on February 3rd, so less than a month away.
Oh my God! I didn't even think about this. This is a whole.
So there's
your year got a lot more complicated with that announcement.
There's a truncated timeline.
Did the governor call you?
I was traveling at the time, and so I was in touch extensively with his team.
Yeah.
But we did not connect until after he had the press conference.
When did you find out it was going to happen?
Leading up to it. Yeah.
Okay. When did you find out it was going to happen?
Leading up to it. So then on Wednesday.
Seriously, I want to sit on it. You don't have to tell me, obviously. You can. It's not in court. But I'm just like, why is there sensitivity around saying the precise nature of the timing?
Because I think that the timing of his own personal deliberations and as he was consulting others, it's a fluid timeline.
Yeah.
And so, when I knew of his decision, it was before the announcement, clearly, to help us understand how to manage that. But I understood that there's a deliberation process going through.
I mean, we're getting to the heart of what I think must be difficult about your job, is because you're talking about your colleagues and friends in some cases. For Governor Walz, like you've lived in his house before, like you
rented the apartment attached to his house.
Okay, so
he was my landlord and my boss.
Right. So I mean, this whole separation of work-life balance and everything is a little bit more complicated for you, especially when you're in a podcast answering a question. You have to figure out what's public information and what isn't. Is that something you've had to get good at?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think being discreet in politics is always something that's incredibly
important. How do you do it? Can you help me? Because I don't know how to do this. I'm serious. Like, do you have have you got to get good at like having a mental list? Like, oh, these are the things that are public. These are things I can't share yet.
I don't know. From my perspective, it's not about whether or not I can share them yet. It's about whether or not it's my information to share.
Okay.
And so, at some point, I'm sure the governor is going to want to talk about how he made this decision, who he consulted on it, and the process by which he came to the conclusion he came. And that's not my story to tell. That's his story to tell. And I honor the fact that he has put in the time and service to the state since he first got elected to Congress. And I feel like me diving into sharing about his very personal deliberations about his future, I'm taking something from him. And I don't want to do that.
Okay. I want to talk about a curse word for a minute. And I want to talk about the word fuck, because it's something that came up this week. The mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Frey, used it in his press conference when he told ICE to get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
And Senator Tina Smith said, just leave us the fuck alone.
And that was like 24 hours later, I think. So it seems to be in the zeitgeist right now to use curse words. Let me just ask you how you feel about that.
Well, it's funny. So I have 2 reactions this week. So I pretty consistently take a look at what the Minnesota DFL is putting on X on Twitter. And, because I either want to repost it to help the team, or I want to understand kind of what our team's perspective and frame might be about any certain topic. And this week, for the first time, I saw our team use the F word on X.
Yep.
And I immediately sent a note to our executive director. I'm like, I don't hate this tweet, but I also this is the first time I've ever seen us use the F word, use that.
Yeah.
And I was curious about it. So it's definitely in the zeitgeist.
Yep.
And then, as you know, John, I do a daily call for our activists and anybody who wants to listen, so that they have the message, the action, and the tools to be empowered. It happens every day at 10:45. And this week I used the F word for the first time on that live call. And people in the comments immediately told me it was unnecessary, that using that word was offensive and didn't increase the impact of my message. And so I think there are multiple opinions about it. I think that, like everyone else, I'm freaked out about what's happening in the state. And I thought Tina Smith's use of the word, Jacob Fry's use of the word, was appropriate because that is meeting where that is expressing, I think, in a very profane but important way what we are feeling in this moment about the presence of ICE agents in the state.
My feeling on it was performative. I think when Mayor Fry said it, it captured the moment of what we all felt. This outrage, this anger and all that. But it was done by someone who is very experienced in a press conference and knows how to not swear when he chooses to. So therefore, in my mind, it was not a slip of a tongue. I mean, you can see from the performance, it was something that, in my view, was decided beforehand. And then same with Tina Smith. And to me, it felt like there's so much talk about it. And I hate that we're talking about it right now as if it's not Renee Good, who was killed in the street, and the federal incursion that we have here. But I think what it represents for me is a feeling that people are just trying to test the waters of what's going to please the populace right now, and not jump out there and actually put personal risk on, maybe getting arrested, maybe laying down in front of a ICE car, doing the things that would be appropriate if the federal government comes in. Instead, the whole conversation is about this expletive. And so, what the fuck are we doing?
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. Like, I do not share that perspective, and I get that. You have a
no, push back. Let's fight.
You have a you have a vantage point probably that is a bit more skeptical than I am. I know both Senator Smith and Mayor Fry really well personally, and when I see her saying that, like, that is not performative to her. She is trying to find a word that illustrates how passionately she feels about what she's seeing happening in her community. And when I see Jacob Fry using that word, Mayor Fry using that word at the press conference, he understood that there is a way in which he can communicate a very clear message, direct message, a succinct message to the audience that he wants to reach. And that was the direct route to make it. And in politics, you want to find the most direct route to communicate your idea, your passion, your concern. And so I think as an observer of these things, you should have a skeptical eye. As somebody who knows these people personally, I don't think either one was performative. I think they were meeting the moment, and they're trying to communicate as succinctly and clearly.
It's performative insofar as it is a choice that they could have not made. Oftentimes swear words come out unexpectedly and unintentionally when feeling real anger. And I was contrasting it to looking at Congresswoman Angie Craig on the floor. No, there's no audio of her confrontation with Congressman Tom Emmer, but you could see a finger jabbing in the face. And then just yesterday, this video came out of former Governor Jesse Ventura going to his old high school and just having this, what are we doing? What is going on in this country? This is not the country that we know. And I think that what I've seen this week, and what I tend to see in the Democratic Party in this country, is a lot of people trying to look around and see what the acceptable level of outrage is that isn't going to make them lose the election in November. And it makes you feel worried about November.
That's an interesting observation. I see in this moment, I was talking with our team about this actually this week. I see in this moment where Minnesota has been. First of all, let's take a step back and look at what Minnesota is experiencing and just name it, right? Minnesota right now is under siege. The president of the United States has decided to wage a retribution campaign against this state. Why? He doesn't like our governor. We voted against him 3 times. He's waging retribution against us and against other blue states. His chief of staff told Vanity Fair just that he's all about retribution. And so everything that we felt over the last several weeks has been about retribution. And when he increased the number of ICE agents in the state by 2,000 agents over the next week, everyone said that is going to be a disaster. And on Wednesday, we saw this retribution campaign,
it was predictable,
become a vendetta that killed somebody.
Right.
And I think right now, this week, John, because of my friends who are reaching out to me on the side saying, what is going on? What should we be doing? I think people right now are literally trying to sort this through. They're not looking around trying to figure out, how do I not lose the election or how do I gain? They're literally trying to say, what do I do to protect my community?
Yeah.
And whether you're an elected official or you're my friend who's, a corporate legal person at one of our corporate Fortune 500 companies, like literally people are wondering, like, what is the most effective thing I can do? I can go to the protest. I can be a constitutional observer. I can go to the vigil tonight at the state capitol for Renee Good. But people want tangible understanding of what we can do. And I think we see politicians trying to figure out how to communicate as clearly and concisely what they want. And their demand is that ICE leave Minnesota and that Minnesota actually do the investigation into this killing.
Demands. It's the demand, the press release, we must stop this stuff, but is it doing anything? Because
that's the question friends are asking.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Is like we are on the political left playing by the rules of politics, and the rhetoric is getting hotter. That's why I was asking about the curse word, because I thought it represented the rhetoric, but the rhetoric doesn't actually do anything when they're literally like tackling school staff outside of our high schools, when like our schools are shut down right now. Minneapolis public schools are shut, and many other schools in the metro area. It feels like we're at 5-alarm fire levels, and I don't know at what point, like all the calls for peaceful protests, it's like, that doesn't seem to do much right now.
Well, so based on the actions of the Trump administration yesterday morning, they're hoping to incite a violent confrontation with Minnesotans who are rightfully exercising their First Amendment rights.
Yeah.
And so when people encourage peaceful protests, it's about not giving Donald Trump what he wants. Donald Trump and Minnesota Republicans are hoping, they understand how damaging of a moment they're in.
Right.
And yet they feel like the only way out of it is by provoking a violent engagement with peaceful demonstrators.
They are they in a damaging moment? Because like the moment it happens, you just got propaganda right out of Kristi Noem talking about making up some story about the car being stuck in the snow, and she hadn't had even enough time to talk about it or understand what was going on. She's just like saying what is right in that moment, and yet they're just willing to just make stuff up. And so I just
I absolutely think it's damaging, John, and this is why. I, as a lifelong Minnesotan who's practiced politics in the state for since I was in college, I feel like the conversation with Minnesotans already was going in the wrong direction for Donald Trump and the Republicans in the state. And they were trying to seize on the issue, on the very real issue of fraud that Democrats are doing everything they can to root out in state government programs. And then Donald Trump sends 2,000 ICE agents to Minnesota and creates this chaotic situation where a woman is killed. I think in the moment right now that we're in, people can't see much further beyond than today.
Yep.
But over the next week, over the next 2 weeks, people are going to start to assess, what is this moment we're in? And that's why I said we are in a moment where the President of the United States has launched and waged a hurtful and harmful retribution campaign on Minnesotans.
Yep.
Not on our politicians, not on our elected officials, but on Minnesotans. And those Minnesotans are bearing the brunt of it, whether it's the federal government cutting funding for critical programs like child care services, or it's 2,000 ICE agents arresting U.S. citizens at a Target in Richfield yesterday.
Yep.
U.S. citizens being arrested and brought to a federal detention center because of the color of their skin.
Yep.
There were brown employees at Target, and so ICE agents showed up and arrested them.
Yeah.
And we all should be outraged. We all should be in the streets protesting. We all should be resisting this unlawful activity. And at the same time, we all should be understanding what this is and providing context for Minnesotans. Because in the urgency of the moment, it's hard to understand what's happening. But as that fog begins to lift over the next week, we as the DFL have a responsibility to make sure that we're helping our elected officials and our activists describe for their neighbors what this experience is. And it's quite simple. Donald Trump has decided to target Minnesotans, and Minnesota Republicans, Tom Emmer, Fischbach-Stauber, Finstead, Lisa Demuth, Kristen Robbins, they all, instead of standing and protecting the people who elected them, have decided to stand with the President of the United States. This president is using every lever of federal government to punish Minnesotans, and Republicans in the state are celebrating it, promoting it.
But what are we going to?
And my job is to make sure Minnesotans understand that context.
Yeah.
Because ultimately they'll reject that, and they'll reject the Republicans who are standing with them.
So?
And the way we push
10
back,
years of Trump.
the way we push back against this is by delivering the largest electoral defeat of a sitting president in the history of Minnesota midterms. That has to happen in November. It's 298 days from now.
This is the struggle that you have in your job, because your job is to make sure the primaries go the way they're supposed to, make sure that the candidate gets picked, and make sure the elections go smoothly. But like the stuff that we're seeing right now, if we're putting this in like a high school textbook, like I know what the end of the chapter is, and the end of the chapter is civil war. Like we're talking about the potential for the National Guard being activated to protect us against the federal government. Like what are we talking about with elections? I don't know if we have enough of us out in the streets right now. I don't know if our elected officials shouldn't be being arrested. Like it just feels like there's not enough being done, and I realize that I'm just man shaking fist at cloud right now because I don't know what the answer is.
John,
I want you to give me more. I want you to be like, let's get out there and let's get buckets of water and throw them on federal officers. Let's do some, get into some trouble to not just have the same press conference again.
John, I hear what you're saying, and I think your sentiment is reflected in thousands of Minnesotans who right now are exasperated about the experience we're going through and wanting to understand exactly what to do. And so this week at the DFL, you asked me the original question that launched into this conversation is like, what do I do in this moment as chair of the Minnesota DFL? What we have done is we have looked at how do we make sure that our communities have the tools and resources they need to be in the moment, right? So how do we increase the amount of constitutional observer trainings we provide, that we help provide, that we coordinate and direct people to in order so that people feel confident when they're in the street pushing back? How do we make sure that people have literally on their person, know your rights information cards, numbers to call if you're arrested, numbers to memorize if you're arrested and this material is taken away. As I said, U.S. citizens are being arrested right now by ICE with no due process, and they're being detained. We need to make sure as many people as possible understand what they can do in the moment. So as a party, like baseline, what are the tools and resources people need so that when they go into the street to push back, they have the confidence that they can do so in a way where they're practicing their First Amendment rights and do so confidently. And then second, I do believe elections matter.
If they happen.
Elections matter, and we're going to have elections in November of this year.
Okay.
298 days from now, and we have to make sure that Minnesotans understand the way that you put an end to this chaos is by changing Congress.
I believe Renee Good, I read a report that she was a constitutional observer. She'd gone through the training.
I don't know that directly or personally.
Okay.
I've spoken to people who are in close circles with Renee and her family. And Renee was trying to figure out how to do the most good in the moment. And clearly, ICE agents, shot and killed her.
That's what I'm getting at. It's like it just feels like we're lemmings here. Like we're doing these constitutional observer trainings, but these people are acting with impunity. These ICE agents walking around our neighborhoods, shutting down our schools, standing outside of schools, intimidating people from being there. Like we're fighting fire with words.
The question, no, I don't think it is words. I think the question is who is ready to stand up and hold Tom Emmer and Fidstead and Stauber accountable to this, right? Yeah. They're sitting members of Congress, Republican members of Congress.
Do you think they're going to change? They had 10 years to change, to stand up against this government. They had so many things to do. Like how do we think now in 2026, all this time in, these guys are going to this up to anything?
Because as bad as the first Trump presidency was and how chaotic it was, I think this second Trump presidency, he has learned to surround himself with yes people.
Yeah.
And Republican members, Republican elected officials have learned that you can't ever, they feel like there's a punishment if you stand against this president.
Right.
I think most Minnesotans are looking at this moment right now, and as that fog begins to lift over the next 2 weeks, I think Minnesotans are going to be very clear about the direction of this country, and I think they're going to stand up. And they're going to be calling for massive change because of it.
They're living in a different world, though. The information ecosystem is so different. They're living in a world where this person who was killed was a domestic terrorist who was trying to attack federal agents. And it's like, this is the thing we've been talking about with misinformation for a decade now. And it just makes me worry about, like, is this where it breaks? Is this where the democratic process breaks? Because we are trying to do all these pacifistic things in the echo of Martin Luther King, and I guess in the long term, Civil Rights Act did pass in the '60s, but I feel so deeply concerned. This is the path that we've seen happen with authoritarian regimes before, of sending in federal troops, of making up reasons that aren't legitimate reasons for why they have to hold power. I just threw in there when you were talking about the elections that we're having, I said, are they going to happen? Because I just don't know that the world is the world I thought it was anymore.
John, I think we're all asking ourselves that question. And when I'm having conversations in my family, with my husband and with our close circle of friends, these are the conversations we're asking. Like, this is not normal. I got into a debate the other day on the way back from a trip with my best friend who was traveling with us. And, this idea that Trump is going to just take Greenland by force was dismissed and said, no, well, I mean, that's not going to happen. They're not going to give up NATO in order to have Greenland. And I was like, actually, I think they will.
Yeah.
I think they will actually, in the next several months, get rid of NATO and figure out how to take Greenland, which is terrifying to me.
Yep.
It's not the world I ever thought I would live in. They do not care about international alliances. That clearly they made that clear this week. And then you think about what consequence that has, because like we're talking about events very acutely impacting Minnesotans this week in devastating ways. But if Donald Trump declares to the world that he gets to manage this hemisphere, then he essentially, to me, is ceding the opportunity for China and Russia to control their spheres of the world.
There goes Taiwan.
And there goes Taiwan. Ukraine's even in deeper trouble. Missiles this week in Ukraine are incredibly dangerous signal about where that's going.
And so it all leads to, like, this is
I'm not worried about civil war. I'm worried about world war.
I know. God, that's brutal. It's true. I mean, it feels like we were at the front lines of this here in Minnesota, and it feels like we have this sacred responsibility right now to do the right thing. And I just worry that we're not doing enough. I see the protests.
Not one Minnesota Republican will stand up and push back against the ICE actions in Minnesota. Not one single Minnesota Republican will push back against this campaign of retribution against our people in this state. And even more concerning, not one Minnesota Republican denounced Donald Trump when he told the New York Times this week that the only limit on his power is his own morality.
At what point do we start calling these people enemies of the people? These are the people who are un-Americans. These are the ones who are racially profiling, doing the things that are against the tablets on the Statue of Liberty. They do not share our values as Americans, and they should be not allowed to do what they're doing. They shouldn't be allowed to hold power.
We have to as a population, as a populace, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to call on American citizens. It's what Jesse Ventura said.
Yeah.
Does the Constitution not matter anymore?
Right.
When Donald Trump tells the American people the only limit on his power is his own morality, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
The reality is the limit on his power is the Constitution. That is the baseline limit on presidential power. We have a Congress right now who's absolutely abdicated everything to him. They're not putting any check on his power whatsoever. And so when I talk about the November 2026 elections, I'm talking about the fact that the only way to invoke the presidential limits on power through the Constitution is by having a Congress willing to do so. And that then becomes real. Now, I don't know where the Supreme Court's going to be at. God, I hope they'll do the right thing, right? And it's scary to me that I sit here and say, I hope the Supreme Court does the right thing, because I don't have certainty that they will.
Right.
But I do know one thing for sure. Let's have elections in November. Let's put limits back in place on this presidential, on the constitutional power of the president. And I do believe we can redirect the direction of this country. I'm going to say this. I believe this, and this is a statement Tim Walz said since I first met him in 2007. We stand on the shoulders of giants that have battled and fought previous efforts decades and generations before. And that's what's happening right now. We stand on the shoulders of giants who've been at the precipice, who have seen moments like this, and they battled through it. And that's why our country is celebrating 250 years today. And it's upon all of us, people of these United States, to do just that. We have to figure out how we stand up, we stand bold, and we resist in this moment in order for us to have elections in November, so that ultimately we will put the check on the power.
It's gonna take a moment. This is it's bewildering to me. It's like I need to put my head above the water every now and again and just take a breath, because when you're drinking from the fire hose of everything that's happening right now, it's so easy for me to get pessimistic about it. And it's not because the more you zoom in, the more pessimism to me just comes forward. But then also, it seems like we've just been on this zombie march for the last 10 years about, oh, this is the new normal now. And it's only like when I go hear my reactions from my friends who don't live in this country, I'm like, oh yeah, this is far from normal. This is not what it is. I guess that's where if I've been confrontational with you in the conversation so far, it's because you represent the old normal that I don't know applies as much anymore today. And so I feel like a level of just cynicism, I guess.
Yeah, let me be clear. None of this is normal.
Yeah.
And if anybody tries to argue to you that it's normal, you should be deeply, deeply concerned about whether or not they're seeing the situation in front of us in a real way.
Yeah.
Things that get me really angry, John, like last night and this morning, watching the video of those two employees at Target in Richfield getting thrown to the ground, arrested, and literally the desperation in their voices yelling, "My name is, I'm a U.S. citizen, and my name is, I'm a U.S. citizen." That's shocking to me.
With the head of DHS,
literally
they're like mugging for the camera.
And that same head of DHS was at a peaceful protest on Thursday morning, taunting protesters, trying to get them to actually engage in violent acts against authorities. And that's the world we live in. So yeah, I agree. I'm not here to tell you things are normal. What I'm here to do is say to you that I do believe in our democracy, that I believe the quickest way for us to manage through and get beyond this lawless president is to create a situation where there's checks on his presidential power, and that's our electoral system in November of this year.
What are your feelings about civil disobedience in this environment right now?
I think civil disobedience is important. I think that civil disobedience, nonviolent civil disobedience, is a hallmark of civil rights movements in every generation and in every civil rights struggle across the world.
I posted a video, or made a post the other day about the demonstration that happened yesterday morning, where people were trying to block the federal agents from being able to park in a parking lot. And I got a lot of comments back from people saying, that's not peaceful protest. We were supposed to be peacefully protesting right now. But then I look at the lessons from the 70s, from the Vietnam War era, from pushing stalled cars into busy intersections, right?
Peaceful protest is, yes. Yeah, there are people. This country is obviously deeply divided, but I'll tell you, I think that the number of people who are committed to Donald Trump's worldview of deploying 2,000 ICE agents on the streets of Minnesota to attack our communities and our neighborhoods is shrinking by the day. I think it's shocking. I think it's overwhelming, and I think it's shrinking by the day.
I hope you're right. I don't feel it.
I feel it, and we see it. We see it in new people showing up, new people wanting information on how they can be in the moment. It's my friends who never ever engage me in politics. These are friends of mine, not through politics, but through other aspects of life, and they're reaching out to me to ask how they can be of service in this moment. And that, to me, is a sign that the direction that Donald Trump is thrusting upon this state, this retribution campaign he's thrusting upon us, is going to backfire in a big way, and Minnesotans are going to stand up to it.
This is what I don't see. This is helpful for me to hear from you, because when I hear you say that, oh, it's going to change, I hear like Kristi Noem's going to change and see the light.
No,
and Tom
gosh,
Emmer.
no.
And no, what you're saying is like, no, there's a group of a silent majority to use a Republican expression.
It's a growing
of
majority.
people who are seeing what those people are doing, and they're deciding to take action now.
Absolutely, and they're people who, like the people I'm hearing from. I'll just be all frank with you, right? They're white people who are incredibly privileged. They're incredibly well off.
Yeah.
They have beautiful homes, beautiful families, beautiful opportunities, and they see that under threat because they don't understand how this state and this country, similar to like, how does this not end up in civil war?
Right.
And they don't want that civil war, but they want to understand what they should do to be empowered in this moment.
Yeah.
And so it is about nonviolent civil disobedience. It's about blocking and making sure that we're doing everything we can to resist in this moment what we're experiencing so that we can get to the November elections. And it's not about Tom Emmer will never see the light. He has kissed the ring of the right-wing hate machine a long time ago. He's been a leader of that right-wing hate machine for decades. He is like one of the original Minnesota Republicans who used, really caustic rhetoric to make a name for himself. He's never going to see the light. He's a lost cause, in my opinion. He's given up on democracy. He's given up on the idea of what the American dream can look like for people. And it's all in pursuit of power for himself.
The big difference now in 2026, comparing this to like the 70s, is we're living in an era where police are armed with assault rifles. We have this paramilitary sort of force coming in from the national level, and it's just much more dangerous to be a protester.
What's much more dangerous is the fact that Walter Cronkite in the 60s and 70s was who we got our information from, and everybody trusted what he was going to tell us.
Yeah.
And he would cover protests against the Vietnam War in a way that everybody perceived as fair and balanced. What our biggest challenge is now is that we have YouTube sensationalists who show up at daycare centers, pounding on doors and demanding to see whether or not kids are present.
Right.
Like those are the people that the Vice President of the United States are platforming. Right. These people who have no ethical standards whatsoever about truth, about honesty, about transparency. Those are the people who so many of their followers get their information from.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important to me that we understand how to communicate. There's a portion of this population who we will never, ever convince. There's a portion of people, probably 25 to 30% of people in this state, who will never be convinced that Donald Trump should be king. He should be an emperor. He should be the person who leads his country until he passes away. And
can't happen soon enough.
We can't actually probably make an impact there. But that tells me that there's probably 65 to 70, maybe even 75% of people who understand the dangerous moment, the precipice in which we face right now, we're faced with. And like I said, generations before us have fought these battles. They've stood up to tyrants. They've stood up to injustice, and we need to do the same.
Knowing what you know now about where we're at with the fraud conversation, it's gotten a lot more heated. You have the YouTube influencers coming in right now, but there's also this interesting thing here in Minnesota where the context of the fraud that happens here was after George Floyd was killed. There was this hypersensitivity to allegations of racism, and so when people would come up and talk about a portion of a Somali community taking advantage of government programs, it got shouted down by a contingent of people who said that was racism and we shouldn't do it. And so playing Monday morning quarterback, what could we have done differently, winding the clock back to 2016 and going to now with fraud that would have kept us out of the situation we're in?
So there's a quite wonky approach to what should have been done probably years ago, and that is putting very real safeguards in place. There are things through government grant programs, for example, that would historically limit grants going only to organizations that have a well-established bank account that has so much money, that has a number of years. It's like if you go apply for a mortgage, they want to know how long you've been at your job. Have you been there for at least 5 years? What has your salary been? What's your wage history? It would be checks and balances like that. I think that because of concerns about people who are able to provide the service, but also that would be a significant barrier to entry, those were probably relaxed too much. And we should probably take a look at how do we actually put in place good, sound policy about who's eligible to receive these grants and how well they're monitored, right? I mean, I think nobody's going to look any Minnesotan in the face and say that the programs that were defrauded were in any way kind of closely tracked enough. Clearly, fraud happens when you don't have eyeballs on where the money's going and who's accessing it, and that certainly would be changed. So from a like a wonkish standpoint, I think there are like actual policy tools that can be put in place to safeguard these government programs, and I think that's important because, as we've seen, I don't think that Republicans care about fraud because they actually want to prevent fraud. Republicans care about fraud for two reasons. One, it's a political opportunity for them. And two, their ultimate goal is to end those programs altogether. So the fraud that actually exists in these programs, from my perspective, is the greatest threat to the programs themselves.
Yeah, to me, the thing that gets me about the conversation right now is that we're talking, the fraud conversation is real and we have to acknowledge it as real, because
Absolutely.
to not acknowledge it as real is to just lose the argument immediately.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, it is real for the poorest portion of society. These are the people who are the most in need, who are receiving, daycare assistance, for example, or meal assistance during COVID. But it became such a powerful argument because it's not an argument about racism, it's an argument about fairness, and that is something that I think Minnesotans care a lot about. And so it almost sidesteps this other issue that exists. When did you become aware that there seemed to be an issue amongst the Somali American community here in Minnesota with fraud, or that there was a higher proportion of people who were being found to be taking advantage of programs that were from that community?
So first and foremost, I will say that fraud exists in both government programs and in the private sector.
Yeah.
And the number of white middle-class people defrauding the local hockey association and people going to jail for that is pretty prevalent in this state.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say very clearly that it's important for us to distinguish between people who are fraudulent actors and what community they come from. And so from my perspective, like I want to emphasize that no matter what community you come from, if you commit fraud, you should be prosecuted. You should be held accountable. You shouldn't be doing it. I think that the Somali community right now, because of how Republicans have, the biggest fraud in the state was, as you know, engineered by Amy Bach, a white woman. And I think she set that fraud up working with people from the Somali community to take advantage of them in a very real way.
Yep.
And some of her accomplices were not from the Somali community.
What I'm trying to get at, though, is I'm trying to do a bit of anthropology, not anthropology. I'm trying to do a little bit of understanding of, like, now we have these YouTube influencers just using Somali as shorthand for fraudulence and not sharing our values.
And that's buying into their frame. Like, that's buying into the president's frame. The president of the United States and Tom Emmer has made it clear he wants to actually denaturalize Somali Americans, Somali Minnesotans, and send them back to Somalia, a country by which most of them never even lived.
I mean, you can't.
And this is like
American.
this is like this is the lowest common thing. Like, I don't know how to say it. Like, I can't imagine a more depraved position that a political leader can take in this state than to declare that an entire community should be denaturalized and sent back to a country that they don't know anything about. And it's happening, obviously, in this immigration moment as well. And so that's why, John, I stand up so fiercely and say the president's effort to paint an entire community as guilty of fraud because they have some actors from that community, like, that's just buying into their frame, and I'm not going to do it. I'm in community with amazing people from the Somali community who have built this state, who've helped build this state in a way that makes it a more fair and just place to live. And I am deeply frustrated that an entire community is scapegoated on an issue that impacts so many Minnesotans.
I've on my channel, I've compared the relationship that we have right now with our Somali American community with the Irish American community, because that's my lineage as well. It's the exact same. You can take how Irish were treated when they arrived here, the political cartoons that like made fun of their physical features and like depicted them as little leprechauns who just got drunk all the time, and then this thing of like some of them getting into power and then the other part of power pushing back against that. It is the exact template for it. And so the purpose of my question is to not be as caught by surprise, which it feels like the state government has been in the last few weeks at the level of vitriol, but to better understand, like, we've known that there was an issue with fraud for at least a few years because there's been reporting on it.
Gosh, yeah.
And so I'm trying to understand, like, for you personally, like, is this something that got missed that could have been snuffed out faster if we would have known that in 2026 we'd be at this moment now?
That's an interesting question. For me personally, my own both personal experience and professional experience is that, like, understanding and tracking the depth of fraud is something that it's like an onion, right? You peel away an onion and you think you've gotten, but you're not even close. Mm-hmm. And I do agree that, like, the fraud issue itself, like, there are just multiple layers of it, and we continue to peel that onion. And what I would say to you is my experience is working in the Walz administration before having this job, but also just observing the local news and whatnot, is that there's been a real concerted effort to understand how deep it goes and what programs it goes in. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is this: the Democrats who are in elected office, the Democrats who serve in state government, care deeply about these populations who rely on the programs and care deeply about the programs themselves, because they understand that they're, like, these programs in some cases are the difference between life and death, survival for these folks. And so it's been important for them to understand how deep it goes. Do I think we caught it soon enough? No, obviously not. I mean, the fact that even one single dollar was stolen from taxpayers is unacceptable.
Let's talk about the number, because the number it's insanity. Every time you try to find out what the perspective is, the federal government said it's $9 billion.
Yeah, that's Donald Trump's
trillions of dollars. I mean, like, do you have a sense at all, like, what the range of where this thing's going to end up being, of like how much money was?
I don't know, but I think that the U.S. Attorney's Office saying $9 billion is incredibly inappropriate. It's not honest. I think it's a very dishonest assessment. I think that at one point Stephen Miller floated the idea that it was $8 or $9 billion, and then that was marching orders to the U.S. Attorney to figure out how to make that claim. I'll never forget that day that he made that claim. I sat there and I was like, this is a political hit job by the U.S. Attorney. The U.S. Attorney is supposed to be this, above the partisan ranker, right? Like, let's make sure that the justice system operates. And what I saw that day was the U.S. Attorney in Minnesota was choosing to carry the water for Donald Trump, to target the Somali community, to target Minnesota. This is part of the retribution campaign, right? It's one thing to do everything you can to fight fraud and to root it out, which is what, Walz and his new fraud czar is doing. It's a whole other thing to be a Christian Robbins and have your own fraud committee that doesn't actually do a damn thing about fraud, right? It's a whole other thing to have the Vice President and Stephen Miller and Donald Trump making up numbers that then the U.S. Attorney, who's supposed to be above partisan ranker, goes out and speaks about it as if it's truth. I don't think there's any truth to that. I don't know what the extent of it is. I think we'll get to the bottom of it. And I'm confident that Democrats actually have a plan to address it, while Republicans admire it as a political opportunity and as a way to scapegoat an entire community.
Are you ready for a hard left turn?
Yeah, let's go.
Do you think that Amy Klobuchar should have a challenger for the governor's race should she choose to run?
I think that my job is to make sure that it's an open and fair process for anyone who seeks the job.
Do you think there should be more than one serious candidate?
I think that primary? Here's what I would say. I think that anybody who wakes up and believes that running for governor and serving as our governor would improve the lives of Minnesotans in a way that is uniquely impactful from their ability, they should run for governor. That's who should run for governor. I think politics is about the improvement of people's lives. It's something Paul Wellstone taught us in the state. And so
that's not, the question I'm trying to get at, though, is like, is it a better process if there are multiple viable candidates running against each other? Right now we have Peggy Flanagan and Angie Craig running against each other for the Senate, for example.
Well, I think
does that make for a better candidate?
The process itself, so you ask process. My job as chair of the DFL is to make sure that the process is fair and open to candidates, which we're committed to doing. And that process will operate fair and open to candidates, whether Amy Klobuchar runs herself or if Amy Klobuchar plus 7 people run. We'll run that process fairly and openly. And I think Minnesotans, Democrats in particular, will decide. I think Amy's a very formidable candidate, and if she chooses to run, I don't know that other top tier statewide Democrats are going to run.
That's what I'm deeply worried about. That I see, the governor made his announcement that he wasn't going to run again after having a private meeting with Senator Klobuchar the day before, and I just see the machinations happening that happens with Hillary Clinton and with Joe Biden, and it's like these lessons are not being learned of needing to take this to the people, and it feels like there's this queen making that's happening behind the scenes right now, because as I've read in the media and everything I'm hearing about, it's a clear path to victory for her because of the name recognition and the fundraising and all that stuff. And it's just my God, have we not learned the lessons of Zoran Mamdani? And the people who are having success in this world right now are the ones who are having a populist, surge. And we just haven't had a chance to talk about it because, the day after the announcement from the governor, this thing has happened with ICE. But I'm still deeply worried that we are not learning the lessons as a party, that we need to hear from the people. We can't just decide who the person's going to be behind the scenes. Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, Amy Klobuchar is an incredibly popular politician in the state. And I mean, what I would tell you is that if she chooses to run and others decide not to run, it's because people understand that she is one of the top vote getters in the general election of any candidate we've had on the ballot in decades.
You followed the 2020 election, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, it's you were saying the same thing that people said about Joe Biden when he eventually won, and it was just kind of it was people knew exactly what was going to happen, and it did happen, which is that he was too old, he got too old, he didn't have the support to be able to win again, and there was this last minute back out. Do you see the similarity that I'm talking about here?
I don't know that I see the similarity to the 2020 election. I mean, I think that a lot is happening in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
And I think Amy Klobuchar is going to make her decision. Senator Klobuchar is going to make her decision on her own timeline. And because of how successful she's been representing the state of Minnesota, others are going to make a decision about whether or not they feel like they have something equal or greater to offer than she does. And my job isn't to go out there and recruit as many candidates to run for governor as possible.
Yep.
My job is to facilitate a process by which grassroots activists in the DFL get to decide who our endorsed candidate is.
My worry as I read about who might be the right person, I see it's Secretary of State Steve Simon, it's Attorney General Keith Ellison, it's Senator Amy Klobuchar, it's Congressman Phillips. These are all people who are
John O'Sullivan. Yeah, I've seen that list.
I like that.
I've seen that list.
But I worry that the people who are running are the people who have been in power, and the populist outrage right now is against the structures of power. So where is our grassroots candidate coming up from right now? I just don't see the discussion around that.
So in order to run for governor, and if you want to be on the preference ballot at precinct caucuses on February 3rd, you can send me an email, and I'll make sure that you get listed on that ballot, John.
Okay, that's something. This is not my announcement.
Talk to your wife about this first.
I would be such a bad candidate. I would be such a bad candidate. I just
talk to your wife about it first.
At any given moment.
Wait, well, I mean, isn't that what you're just saying? Maybe that's what
No, I'm saying that the Democratic Party has become a party that is a bit too cozy with institutional money, and there's all of the elected officials in DC who openly trade in the stock market and seem to make themselves wealthier and wealthier. And I think that there's a lot in common between Mamdani and Trump in terms of they have this unfiltered way of getting a group of people behind you. Now, we can argue about whether that is justified populism or not, and whether they're talking out of their ass or not, but there's a different tenor to the way that Senator Amy Klobuchar speaks and that Mayor Mamdani speaks, or AOC speaks, right?
Yeah, I think... Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that there is a different way.
It's the Sanders-Clinton thing, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think that Senator Klobuchar, I think that a lot of folks that you've listed who might run for governor are people who want to who want to make sure that we win in November of this year in order to put a check on this president. That's what I think I see. And I think when people show up to caucuses on February 3rd in Minnesota, dfl.org/commit in order to sign up to attend caucuses, people who show up to caucuses on February 3rd are going to go there with one thing in mind. How do we deliver the largest electoral defeat of Donald Trump in the history of Minnesota midterms? And so they're going to look around and they're going to think about who should be our candidate, who should ultimately, be our best candidate to win in November of next year.
We should talk also about your personal bio here, because a lot of the stuff you're talking to me now about what we should do now has to have been informed by the fact that you led the marriage equality campaign here in Minnesota. Are there lessons that you took from that campaign that you use today? Absolutely.
The most important thing Democrats can do to win the hearts and mind of voters is to listen to them. We have, as a Democratic Party, I think our biggest challenge and our biggest shortfall has been that we stopped listening to voters of what they really want, and instead we started telling voters what they deserve or what they should have. And if we as Democrats take the moment to hear from voters about their thoughts, ideas, goals, perspectives, dreams, I think that is how we build a bridge of trust with voters so that they ultimately want to vote for our candidates. And so in the marriage equality movement, a lot of political campaigns, John, want to spend 30 seconds at a door. And if you spend more than 30 or 45 seconds at the door talking to somebody and you don't have their commitment to vote for you, then you're wasting your time. Well, that's not how it works anymore. People who are wrestling and vacillating between voting for this candidate or voting for that candidate or not voting at all feel like that they're like what politicians are offering don't actually mean anything to them personally. And as Democrats, we have to be the party that says we see you, we hear you, and this is how we're going to be responsive to you.
How did you do that in the marriage equality campaign? What
long-form conversations by training people on how to be curious. So this is how the conversation would go. I would call you up, John. I'd say, "Hey, John, I'm Richard. I'm a volunteer for Minnesotans United. We're doing this campaign about the marriage amendment on the ballot, and I just want to know, how are you thinking about it?" And then you'd start talking and telling me how you're feeling. And then I'd say, "John, tell me, are you married?" You'd say yes, and I'd say, "John, why did you get married? Why'd you get married, John?"
You ask me now, does role play? Yeah. I got married because I fell in love with an Australian woman and I wanted to be with her, and it was a path for us to get citizenship, and we wanted to be together.
Yeah. Do you have a family, John? Do you have kids?
I do have 2 kids.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What are their ages?
3 and 5.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's very cool.
Thanks, yeah.
Well, John, I just want to tell you that how Minnesotans vote on this will impact my life. I met somebody who I fell in love with in 2007. It's now 2012, and we want to start a family. We want, marriage to us, we want to get married for very similar reasons. Marriage to us is about love and commitment and starting a family. And that's ultimately what our goal is too. And so I hope that you'll consider the fact that, like you, there are people out there who want that same opportunity. And so then we ask the question fundamentally, why would you ever want to deny somebody the right to marry the person they love? And for us, we understood it during the marriage campaign. There is a knowledge gap between why, straight people thought gay people wanted to get married for rights and benefits, access to a 401k or a pension, when in reality, marriage is about, the definition of marriage is about love, commitment, and responsibility. And when we close that education gap and then ask the person, Why would you ever want to tell somebody it's illegal to marry the person you love using the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated? That ultimately is how we won the marriage campaign. But we only could get there through a authentic conversation. And that's what I think Democrats need to do now. We need to be curious about what voters are facing. Not once in the last hour have we talked about affordability. We've talked about the ICE killing in Minneapolis. We've talked about Donald Trump and his tyrannical ruling, his lawlessness. We've talked about the Republicans in Minnesota who've abdicated any responsibility. We've talked about whether Democrats, actually have a plan to fight this tyrannical president. And ultimately, John, I can tell you right now, voters, the average voter who either is going to vote Democrat or not vote at all, they're going to vote based on whether or not they think our candidates, the Democratic candidates, actually will do something to make their life more affordable. That's how they're going to vote. I think the activism and the moment we're in now are freaking people out, and that's increasing the number of people who are going to vote no matter what, and they'll vote for Democrats, and I believe that. But ultimately, if we want to maximize our opportunity, we will get into a conversation with voters about what it actually means so that their vote on election day in November of 2026 has a direct impact on the affordability in their life. We have to make that case.
It's funny. I have a different reaction to that anecdote you just told me, which is that your fighting for marriage equality and leading to that campaign was sharing with people your values and making them recognize that we share the same values as Americans. The affordability thing is almost like, oh, that's not the lesson I take. It's like, hey, let's talk about who we are. Who are we as a people? What makes us in a shared community of aspirational people who want to make our lives better and the lives of the people around us better? That's a different tenor than I want access to a 401k in the gay marriage debate, or right now are immigrants getting unfair treatment, or the fraud debate about like how much money has gotten away. It's like, who do we want to be and what represents us as a people? That's a discussion I don't know is happening as much.
Well, it's very interesting. If you ask the average strong, we have data on this. I have to show you. If you ask the average strong Democrat what they want us to talk about, they want to talk about preserving democracy and what kind of people we are in order to fulfill this perfect union. But the average folk who is not engaged in the political discourse on a daily basis, who are literally just living their lives, taking their kids to swim lessons, et cetera, talking to them about affordability is acknowledging the deepest fundamental concern they have, which is an economic survivability of their family.
Keep going.
And that's why it's so important for us. That is values, right? It's Democrats actually. I say affordability and you think, oh, just pocketbook, like you're just going to make it cheaper for them. No, for those voters, it's a fundamental disconnect. They don't think Democrats, Republicans, any politician actually gives two shits about how they can make it in their life, how they can earn a paycheck, pay their bills, and have a little bit of money for pizza on a Friday night. They think politicians have completely, on both sides of the aisle, abandoned them. And what I'm telling you is that core issue of economic survivability, of like the real impact of of who I am and my family, there's different generations of like persuasiveness in politics. The least persuasive is like, do this on behalf of your community. Oh, you don't like how ICE is performing in the streets? Vote Democrat, right? That's least persuasive. Me and my own. You want to protect you and your kids because you don't want ICE in your schools? Well, then vote Democrat. But the most persuasive level is like, my vote on election day in November of 2026 will directly impact me. That is literally connecting with them on a level that they understand their vote is connected to their future. Oh, man.
I don't know what that says about us, about a people. The most persuasive thing is a self-interest, but it's a good place to leave it because there's a lot of reasons for me to be irritated with Donald Trump this week. Right now in this moment, my biggest reason is that we didn't get to half the things I wanted to talk about with you in our hour. I wanted to talk to you about content creation. I wanted to talk to you about your being the youngest mayor in Minnesota. There's so much more to go into. So I think I just love to have you back again for another hour. But for now, thank you for taking all the topical questions and being here.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.
All right, this is a little bonus thing. I'm going to ask John some questions. Usually you get this on the Patreon, but today we're just going to release it to everyone.
I think when it's like newsworthy like this, I just feel a need to have it out there.
I took some notes.
Okay.
I have questions this time.
Yeah.
So first question, Richard said, he's not worried about civil war. He's worried about world war.
Did you? I paused after that, right?
Yeah. I wrote it down and I was like, ask John about this. What went through your mind when he said that?
I mean, I'm also worried about civil war, though. Like, I mean, it's brutal. I mean, it's hard not to. You go to the World War thing, and then we have to start thinking about nuclear proliferation and not proliferation, it's nuclear war, right? Like that's what we're talking about, nuclear powers doing war with each other.
Yeah.
And it's almost like my brain doesn't have space to occupy.
I mean,
that.
I haven't even thought about nuclear war. I was more so like with the Russia stuff, Gaza, Israel, Venezuela.
My world's on fire. How about yours? That's where I like it. Never get bored. Smash Mouth.
Okay, thanks. I don't know what you're talking about.
All-Star, the song All-Star?
I mean, yeah, I know
great
the
quote,
song,
a philosopher.
Yeah. Wow, you a big Smash Mouth guy?
I'm a big Smash Mouth guy. I had their album.
Okay, I have another question.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I love that you're really critical of Richard's like position.
Yep.
But I think part of his like stance is honorable. So you are saying like, you said, we're fighting fire with water. No. You said fucking hell.
Fire with
you said
words,
fire with words.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fire with water would be smart though.
That would be. That's how you should fight fire, ideally.
Why aren't we fighting fire with fire?
Yeah.
Okay. Extrapolate that if you fight fire with fire. That is, you are saying, why don't we have civil war? Like it's putting the onus on him.
Yeah.
And he's saying, he's kind of standing his ground and saying,
I wanted to hear that from him. That's what I was trying to get that out of him because, I mean, my emotional reaction says, screw all these people. What are we doing here? Let's fight. And I need someone to talk me off the ledge. And so I was looking for that from him a little bit.
Are you off the ledge?
No. I mean, no, I'm not because I don't feel convinced.
But do you at least understand that argument? Like, yeah, it can be perceived as weak. It can also be perceived as a strong stance.
I understand it because
to not fight fire with fire.
I understand it because of Martin Luther King, right? Like Martin Luther King showed us nonviolence, protest can be effective. But in this moment, right now, when people are being like murdered and kidnapped off the streets because of the color of their skin, it just feels so impotent. It feels so impotent, and I cannot emotionally get behind it, even if Richard can intellectually get behind it. And that's what I wanted to have. I wanted to have that, my emotional reaction against his intellectual one. I wanted to air that out because it's what's, I don't know, it's what I'm thinking all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Do you want civil war?
God, no. I mean, of course not. But I mean, like, at what point,
that's good.
The problem is, like, at what point are we getting it whether we like it or not? You know what I mean? When the federal government, when the federal government's calling people in, and we're trying to defend ourselves with our National Guard, like, I'm not trying to be cavalier, but I also don't want us to think that this is just a budget debate, and I'm being too extreme with it. But at times, it feels like we are in the atmosphere of a budget debate with the way that the Democrats are responding to what's happening in our streets right now.
No, I understand that. I mean, with this stuff, you've kind of become like a proxy for our Minnesota, an emotional Minnesotan response.
Yeah.
But like, if you're the guy in charge,
I am internet
would
comments.
you be doing anything?
I'm internet comments anthropomorphized. That's what I am.
Yeah. But if you're the guy in charge, you just talk to the guy.
I know, but
kind of in charge.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's different. You know?
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of assumptions being made, I think, that, well, we all feel this. I wanted to hear him say, no, here's why we don't want it. He didn't quite get there as much because, I mean, part of the challenge with his job is he is the spokesperson for the state's Democratic Party, the DFL. And so he's not an elected official himself. He's trying to represent a big tent of people who have a lot of different opinions. But how do you think it went? I feel conflicted about it because he just, I mean, for context, like he walked out of here 5 minutes ago, so I'm still processing.
Well, who cares about how did you feel about it?
I don't know. I'm too close to it. I've started listening back to my podcast.
Yeah, sometimes you're like, God, I didn't like the way that went. I'm like, dude, that was amazing.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you because like I'll listen back because it's a different experience sitting in this chair than watching it back.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. We talked about the comparison between the Ken Martin conversation with
John
the
Stewart.
head of the DNC.
Yeah.
and Jon Stewart, I would say it was pretty similar to that, honestly.
Yeah, was it?
I mean, yeah, it's like you can feel your frustration. You can also kind of see from his side wanting to have, be reasonable about things. And you want to be unreasonable about things in a good way.
I think, I had hoped that the conversation was going to be more about his bio. He's a fascinating guy. We didn't even get to talk about the fact, youngest mayor in the history of Minnesota. Before the federal government allowed gay marriage across the land, he was the person who made gay marriage happen in Minnesota. He was, deputy chief of staff of the governor, and now he's the head of the party. Like, crazy interesting bio. But we didn't really get into that all that much. And so that's why I'm conflicted, is like, did we accomplish anything here?
I mean, I would say yes.
What do we accomplish?
Well, I think that this is what we need to be talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's great to learn about Richard Carlbom's history and stuff, but like, I think he would be the first one to say, let's talk about what's happening right now.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how the internet responds to the conversation about Amy Klobuchar, because it's just like,
another engagement bait. Your engagement baiting? You mean just generally speaking?
No, I mean
just
on
like this video.
It's just like, it's a discussion that's not being had, and I just see the party closing ranks around one candidate here, and I just
it's a done deal. Don't you think it's a done deal?
I 100% think it's a done deal. He can't say it's a done deal, but he kind of did, and he's like, well, if everyone supports one candidate, and it's just like, well, come on.
Yeah, I like his wording. He was like Amy Klobuchar, or if like other candidates, it was Amy Klobuchar and other candidates.
Yeah, I think. I framed it that way to start with. To be fair to him, but I think that like a lot of this stuff is the news of the day, and will fade away with whatever next shocking thing happens with what's happening in Minneapolis right now. But in terms of things that might make an impact, maybe it's that conversation about her. I really wish. I'm just so tired. So tired of everything that's happening in our city. It doesn't let us like step back. And
sure.
The point of this podcast is not to talk about the news of the day.
Yeah.
The point of this podcast is to like understand someone in a deeper way, because that timer is a chunky bit of time, but it didn't feel like we had a chunky bit of time today.
I see. You're disappointed because you've abandoned the concept of the
show
itself.
Because I feel a responsibility to it. It feels.
I mean, I think it's a rational to abandon the format.
I guess so. Yeah, a special edition
All you can
of
do is
1 hour
laugh.
detours. Yeah. God.
Okay, end it.
Yeah, okay. That's the end. If you're listening to this, it's because everyone's going to get this one, because it's newsworthy and it feels like important that we just put the whole thing out. But generally speaking, these behind the scenes sections of the podcast are for our premium supporters only. If you value this and what we do on this channel, then please go to 1minutetours.com and become a subscriber, a supporter. And thanks so much.